Hello! Hey everybody, welcome back to the Antisyphon live stream. We have this on every Tuesday and Wednesday about this time. If you're watching the recording, thanks. I appreciate that. If you're watching live, then hello. You can participate with us in the chat as much as that you want to. I just got back from vacation, so I'm still getting into this. And I also changed around my entire office and stuff, and everything's gone. And we now have an office that we go to, but I'm not because I'm here today. And so, I'm okay. I'm fine. Everything's okay. We got Nathan Sweaney with us. We got Ryan, who makes us go large whenever he wants to hit the button, and then yes, just like that.
You called for it. I had to. You called for it.
And then we look at ourselves. So Ryan, enlarge.
Make it awkward.
Yes. All right. But we got Nathan Sweaney here with us today. Nathan, am I saying your last name right?
I didn't hear. How'd you say it?
Sweaney.
I've heard worse.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's Sweaney, more of an A instead of an E. But yes. Literally nobody in my life has ever pronounced it so correctly. So
okay.
My grandpa used to say, you can call me whatever you want as long as it's not late for dinner.
Okay. All right. So John Strand comes from South Dakota, and he says Dragon and big. It's always like a hard A.
Yeah.
And so whenever we get the chance, we highlight the word Dragon and big and swig.
Big.
Things. So.
We've got a couple Canadians over at Secure Ideas, and or former Canadians anyway. And yeah, we got lots of bags.
Whenever he's like, we need to put this in a swig bag. We're like,
swig bag. I love it.
Damn it, John. All right, so Nathan, you're here
awesome.
to talk about Defcon. I've been to Defcon. I was at Defcon before. It was
cool.
No, I was definitely not at Defcon.
That was a while back.
I think I started at Defcon 24 or 25 or something.
Okay.
I did catch a flight from Europe. So I was in Europe for vacation, and I flew straight from Greece to go to Defcon for the very first time.
Oh, man. That's exhausting.
Which the time zone change, I ended up being up for 29 straight hours. And then when I finally did go to sleep, I slept for 14 straight hours, which was memorable.
That's how I feel coming back from Vegas every time, no matter how long I sleep. Right? It's like, I'm going to crash for another day and a half.
Yeah, there's a meme going around right now. It's like, is this post Defcon life or is this COVID? No one can tell.
Oh yeah.
Which one it is.
We've had that. Oh, what? Go ahead.
Sorry, I was gone for a week, so my cat is very clingy and mouthy, and so I'll go on mute when you're talking.
Awesome. Yeah, we took our whole technical team. We were gonna have a big party in 2020. It was our 10-year anniversary, and let's rent a house and do Vegas. And we had a bunch of people that hadn't been to DEF CON before, but then COVID, right? And so they gave us a 2-year extension on the much. So this year it's like, all right, who wants to go? I think we took 13 or 14. So far we've had 1 test positive for COVID, and I'm assuming the rest are just a matter of time. We'll see. Hopefully it's not too bad.
So weirdly, I rented an Airbnb in Vegas 2 years ago. For 2019, I was doing it for a bunch of testers, and I had to become a part owner at the house, because at the time the law in Vegas is only owners could be a part.
Interesting.
So we ended up owning 1 share of this house.
How funny!
I have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
Did you have to sell it back after when you checked out? That seems very complicated for people who rent houses.
As I was pitching it to our accountant, I was like, we own 1 share of a house now in Las Vegas, and she's like, I don't know how this works. And I was like, I don't either. But when I got there to get everything set up, they had signs everywhere that says, if the cops come to the door, this is what you say. It's like,
that sounds so really sketchy. Oh man. So yeah, no, I know the casinos are pushing really back on that because they make money from people staying there. And so like the owner of our house was telling us hey, you're not allowed to have more than so many cars in the parking lot. You can't do anything that looks like you're having a party. Keep the noise. I mean, normal, keep the noise down. Don't annoy the neighbors. But supposedly the city council or whoever is really pushing back on certain things, trying to limit some of that. Yeah. Anyways.
So this is the DEF CON episode today. Nathan, go ahead and tell us what was some of your main takeaways from DEF CON this year?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm like you. I've been going to DEF CON for a long time. Not I think 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there was my first. So this was 30. So 15 or 16 years. It's like you expect, lots and lots of people. I don't know. I think somebody said they were expecting 27,000. I don't know if they got to that number. but that's a lot of people, no matter how you split them up.
Yeah.
Lots of new people. I mean, I don't know how many people I talk to. I'm one of those people. I like to meet people. Like Defcon, I didn't go to any talks. I went around. I like to go to the booths and the villages and the challenges and try all this kind of stuff. But I like to just meet new people. Hey, what are you doing? Where are you from? What do you found interesting today? And it's amazing how many people I will meet that then later end up being a good friend, or somehow we interact in the industry. But I'm amazed how many people were relatively new. Like they've gotten into security within the last 2 or 3 years. This is their first Defcon. I know it's always been that way to some degree, but I felt like this year was significantly larger than before. I see the comment, Captain Crunch over there. It'll be awesome if it starts running Windows 95. So right now
I've quite a feat.
Yes. Actually, so I've got 2 of those. Talking about my Mac Plus over here. This one has a RAM error, and so it boots up, but then it throws like a number. I've got to find some new RAM from 1986 for that. I've got another one that I've gutted the insides, and I'm thinking about putting a screen on it and put something like that, Raspberry Pi or something in it. But anyway, Extreme Paperclip said it was his first Defcon. That's awesome. But something else I noticed I thought was odd. Maybe not odd, but I think it's a little bit of a change. A lot of I'm going to call them legends, the people that I know in the industry that have been around forever, the people that I always looked forward to having lunch with, or having a beer with, or whatever at DEF CON. A lot of them didn't go this year, and COVID's part of it. There's people made choices, yay or no, and I get that, I respect that. But there's a lot of people that are just like, what, I'm doing all these other cons, I'm going to all this other stuff. DEF CON's not as high a priority for me anymore. And I think that's a little bit of a shift from what we've had in the past, where DEF CON was always kind of the family reunion, and the industry was small enough that, people weren't necessarily there for the talks. They were there to have a good time with their friends and family. And now it's become a little bit more of this is a really big con that I don't know. I don't know what that plays into, right? I think there's a lot of focus on training. For folks that haven't been to the conference, there's a lot of villages. And so, like years ago, they had the voting machine village, and it was the area where if you wanted to do anything with voting machines, if you were interested or had some experience or knowledge, you could come hang out in that place and share what you knew. They had some voting machines you could tear apart and stuff like that. That type of thing has expanded just incredibly. So, I mean, you've got some of the traditional ones that have been around for a while, the hardware hacking village and AppSec, and there's a red team village and a blue team village. But now we've got things like the misinformation village. There's a retail, like point of sale village, payments village, privacy village. I thought that was interesting, just how many different pieces there are of people trying to do different things.
Well, it's almost like DEF CON is the platform.
Yeah.
DEF CON's the platform. You're going to get everybody there. It's almost like a shopping mall. You have all the places that you can go that make sense for you. Like the first time I went to DEF CON in 2015, like the villages threw me off because I wasn't used to it. And so when you get there and you start looking around, you're like, oh, this is a thing. Like a friend of mine said, I was speaking at the ICS village. And I was like, oh, so I went to see it. And at the time, ICS village was kind of small. And it was like him talking to 7 people with a screen and a projector. And I was like, what is this?
Right.
But over the last 7 years, like the villages have caught on. They've become like their own. It's like a con within a con.
It's like
you become one of the village people.
Especially in Vegas, right? I mean, no, I mean it's more than a con in a con. It's like 30 cons within a con, right? Like it really has become this, like, here's this specialized focus thing. If you're interested in this thing, somebody asked about a car hacking village. Yeah, that was, they had at least, I think there was a Tesla and some other electric car there that were open and you could hack at them and take apart and stuff. And then the aerospace village, I don't know if that was new this year, but it was easily the most active village. They had representatives from Boeing and I don't know, a half dozen other aerospace companies. So
one thing is, like, when I, like 7 years ago, wanted to sponsor DEF CON, there was no booth. There was no, you can't sponsor like a table and
no
like
corporate
village. The villages kind of got around that a little bit.
Yeah.
And they're good because they're coming and bringing things, they're doing recruiting and all that stuff. But definitely, like, when I want to sponsor something, it's probably, I'm going to sponsor a village. I'm not going to sponsor something at DEF CON.
Yeah, and that's always been a traditional thing. There's a vendor area, you can sell stuff. Secure Ideas, we sold T-shirts there, gosh, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. But yeah, you're right. You couldn't just corporately sponsor stuff. But now it's basically what's happening. And I'll be honest, like, I think it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And here's why. Like, one of the other things that has worked out really well in the villages is the capture the flag type training events that are really focused on helping you learn new skills. And so the IoT village, I don't remember who the sponsor was. Clearly, maybe their sponsorship money didn't work out so well if I don't even remember their name. But they had like 50 Microsoft Surface tablets with keyboards and everything. And they had a really well-developed IoT training system. So you could learn how to reverse firmware. You could learn how to, interact with web interfaces and do some basic web-based detection of problems. I don't remember what all the weather was. There was like 4 or 5 different categories, and it was all beginner level stuff for the most part. Like it walked you through downloading firmware, running binwalk, learning how to extract the keys and do different stuff like that. But it was really well built for folks that are trying to get into this area. Aerospace was the same way. You talked about recruiting. Amazon, AWS was there. They had some kind of little capture the flag that was designed to teach you. It was a little corporate-y. I mean, it was like, go start an EC2 instance, go create an S3 bucket, right? It's like, all right, this is their training program for how to use AWS. But it was also designed a little bit around, hey, here's this security incident thing. What tools can you use to help find the problems and stuff like that? I was really impressed with that. And I think it's good. I'm curious if other folks have comments on that, of whether it's, I don't know, too corporate-y. Have we sold out? Is Defcon like the sold out corporate con now?
Is it the hybrid? Like it's a hybrid, maybe.
Yeah.
So a couple years ago, a friend of mine was doing the car hacking village, and I know, let's just say it's a rumor that one of the cars they were using was rented. Like that was not the intended purpose of that.
Oh no.
But it's nice that like Tesla brings their car and says, go ahead and hack it. Do your worst to it, because in a way, like that's free. It's like a free bug bounty program for them to just come and bring their car. For the attendees, they're like, wow, I get to hack a Tesla. But for the Tesla, they're like, yes. Yeah. Tell us all the things you can find.
Well, and that's kind of the way the voting machine thing worked out. When that first started up, people were like, oh no, we can't, we got to hinder this and prevent this and whatnot. And then they're like, hey, you know what? Actually, this might not be so bad. I think we saw the same thing with like medical devices, right? In the beginning, it was like, nope, can't touch medical devices. And then the medical community was like, maybe this isn't a bad idea within certain guidelines and rules. And, we have some scope. Maybe it's not a bad idea to use some of this. I mean, the corporate side of me is like, all right, they're just using free talent here, right? So they don't have to pay for a pen test, maybe. I don't know.
Crowdsourced.
Yeah. Somebody asked in chat here, what if Defcon was moved to some other city, not Vegas? I think we just wouldn't call it Defcon. I don't know. I'm not sure if I would see that. I don't think that would work.
There's always like San Diego Comic-Con, because that's one of the biggest comic book conventions. What if it moved from San Diego? Yeah, I guess. It's not just the con, it's what you do at the con. Like you have your traditions, you have your rituals, you go to Batista's Hole in the Wall on Fridays, you go to the Hoffenfass on Saturdays. Like it's not just DEF CON, it's all the things you do, because you only get to do this one time a year. And for new people, they're creating new traditions, but it's like they're being introduced to these places by the people who've been going there for years. So I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I think that kind of goes back to the whole, friends and family, small industry thing versus where we're going, where it's bigger. And I don't know, maybe we're the old fogies that are just stuck on that tradition and don't want to lose it, but I don't want to lose it.
Yeah. Like we wouldn't move Wawa's Hackin' Fest from Deadwood. Like Deadwood is a part of Wawa's Hackin' Fest. Like you go to Deadwood for Wawa's Hackin' Fest. And
you can move it from like Reno to San Diego though. Like
that's way west. That's different.
It's totally different. So different letters.
Yeah.
Oh man. No, so one thing that I think is good, no matter how we look at it, because there's a lot of the corporate sponsors thing, the focus on challenges and training and all this, the expanding villages. I feel like there's so much focus put towards we hear about the skills gap, right? Like there's this, we have all these jobs and not enough people to do them. We need so many more security professionals. I think what we're seeing is a natural response to that, of not just companies, but folks in the security industry saying, how can we have all these new people, how can we get them up to speed quickly? And how can we, people that maybe want to transition to security, what options can we make available for that? I think a lot of what we're seeing is a result of that.
Yeah.
That's my thought anyway.
It's here's all the things I wish I would have had when I started.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some people who go, well, I didn't have it, so you don't get it. And then there's other people like, well, I don't want you to suffer like I did.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of people, that's why there's so many villages training and doing so many things, is because it's an opportunity for people to give back to the community that they didn't have someone, or they did have someone and they're like, that was so beneficial to me, let me do it to somebody else.
Absolutely. I mean, I got into security in the point of sale industry, and I spent 8 years working for a company. There was nobody to talk to. I mean, this was beginning of PCI, back when the card brands had their own programs and whatnot. And hey, you're told to do this. How do I do this? I don't know. There's nobody to talk to. Now I work with an association that works with that industry, and I'm like basically free consulting for their members. So if they have questions, they can call Nathan and say, hey, how the heck do we do this? I'm like, oh, that's easy. Here, let me show you. Or here's this company that can help you. Or you know what? Here's what that PCI thing really means. I think finding more and more ways like that where experienced people can give back and help people come up. I think that's necessary.
Yeah. I'm just looking over the chat real quick to see if there's anything I'm missing.
Yeah. So one question, I'm going to put out a challenge there. I'm going to put out questions to see what people think. There's been a lot of contention about whether or not there is such a thing as entry-level jobs in security. I've heard the argument, and maybe at times I've even made the argument, that it's almost impossible, if not very, very difficult, if not impossible, to start in security, right? Without other experience and relevant, whatnot. I've heard other people say it's just like any other job. We just got to train people the right way and give them the tools to get started and whatnot. What do you guys think about that? Do you have an opinion?
So we'll wait for the chat to catch up. For years, like I got started because I worked with Ed Scotus, and Ed Scotus is a teacher. He's an instructor, and he came in and the one of the things that we would tell people like who wanted to become pen testers is like become a sysadmin, because you learn how security is really gets done. Yep. And since you know how security really gets done, then you know how to, you know what to look for. Like, because you're like, well, this is the way they say to do it in school, but this is the way that people do it. And so if I'm pen testing a company, I want to think about how people actually do security instead of how they tell you to do security, which is completely different. I don't know if that's still the same. Like having that base level skills of like, here's how computers work. Here's how users use computers. Like my wife started in security in the help desk. And one of my favorite stories that she ever told me is that she had a user call in and say, hey, I need to fix this thing. It's in Microsoft Word or something like this. And my wife took remote access to her computer, went and clicked on the help inside the actual program, typed in the same question that the woman had, and then it popped up and she said, here you go. Here's the answer to your question. And
let me Google that for you.
She's like, I'm trying to teach you how to fish so you don't keep asking for fish. But knowing where to go, knowing what to look for those years that she did that job, like that's why when she talks about security now, she understands like the deep history of how users got to where users got to.
Yeah, for years at Secure Ideas, we always said that we hire people who are senior level in some area of IT, right? So generally we're looking for 10 years of experience or more as a developer, senior level developer folks, a network operations person, a sysadmin. That's where I started out in development and then moved into sysadmin and networking. And that's what I did, right? Like I was in the industry. I learned the technologies at a deep level. And then the security became easy as part of that. Actually, I took Ed's class, was the very first security class I ever took. But that's when you have that underlying understanding of, telling somebody to run Responder doesn't help much if they don't really understand how LLM&R and NetBIOS works, right? Like teaching them to poke a button or a tool, that doesn't really help understand the risk associated with the issue. If, here on this network, this is really bad. On this network, that's fine. You've got to understand why those are different. And I don't know how to teach that very well outside of just experience.
Yeah. Whenever I play Backdoors and Breaches with a team, like I will, bring up the card for Ella M&R, and I'll ask people like, hey, do you know what this does? And generally, like, one hand hesitantly gets raised.
Nobody wants to admit it.
Yeah. Cool. Do you want to explain it to everybody else? I'm like, geez, no. And I was like, and that's okay. Like, it's okay that you don't know this because we're going to learn it right now. But a lot of times you don't know what you don't know until you have a reason to learn it.
Yeah.
Looking at the chat, a lot of good chat going on.
Yeah. I saw somebody mentioned their first job was a SOC. And in the past, I can't remember what I said. I said something that was taken horribly wrong on a webinar like this about SOC jobs, because I never worked there, but I've got a lot of friends who, that's where they started as SOC analysts. And there's some people that love that. That's their thing. Like I've got friends that they've been doing that for a decade and they just love it. That is not my thing at all. Like, not my thing. But I think a lot of folks are like, hey, I'm going to get in security. Maybe they're going to get a degree or whatever. They do go through some program and they get stuck as a SOC analyst, whether they want to or not. That's the only entry level thing they can find. And then they get burned out after 6 months because they're like, I thought I was going to do cool stuff. I hear about sexy pen testing and I hear about the cons and I hear all this stuff. And I'm staring at these logs every day. I'm going to go be a musician, right? Like I don't know. I recognize the challenge there.
Yeah. Let's see. Extreme Paperclip says entry-level InfoSec jobs. Obviously, it's a good way to enter, but if someone has a self-driven passion for InfoSec and they work hard to learn by doing hands-on courses, hack the box, try to hack me, then I believe the only barrier is HR software that throws the resume right into the trash. Just my thoughts. It's a good point. John always talks about like he doesn't know if we have degrees. So John Strand owns Antisyphon and Black Hills. He's like, I don't know if any of the people on my staff have a degree. Do know if they have a passion for the work that they're doing. And
absolutely.
But like John personally hires pretty much all of us. It's hard for most companies to do that. Like once you get to a point where you don't even know the employees you're hiring, you just have to go based off of what the resume says.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you mentioned that. Kevin, our CEO, doesn't have a degree either. And I think probably only about half the company does. Honestly, I don't remember for sure either. I will say this as someone who hires a fair number of our folks, or at least part of the interview process, a degree doesn't tell me you know anything, but a degree tells me you at least had to jump through some hoops to learn some skills, time management skills, team working skills, the ability to deliver skills, communication skills. It doesn't mean that you've perfected those or are good at them, but you at least jump through some hoops. So it gives me a starting process in the interview to like talk through what you know and what you don't know. And, I'm looking for areas where, hey, that's going to be a problem. But to extreme paperclips perspective, there are absolutely other ways of doing that. That's really hard for big companies to figure out in an interview process.
Yeah. So you're doing a CISSP thing? What's the thing that you're doing?
Yeah. So a lot of people that want to get the CISSP, they go one of two routes. They do the $7,000, what do they call that? The boot camp, where it's like, hey, I'm going to go drink from a water hose for 6 days and come out exhausted and really don't remember anything. This is like cramming the night before a test, right? Like you get just enough to get what you got to have, but you really don't absorb it. And that's not a bad deal. Maybe if your company's paying for it, if you've got the funds. The other option, and this is the route I took, was, hey, I'm going to study on my own time and I'm going to take it eventually. And after about 6 years of not doing that, right, it's like, I just, there's always something else that needs to happen.
Sure.
So we said, hey, there's a problem here. Like people can't afford to take the training. They can't afford to do the boot camp. It's just exhausting. Taking 6 or 7 days off work is hard. But what if we build a mentorship program where we help people study at home? And that's the goal of our CISSP mentorship. It's you're still studying on your own, but we're going to guide you through the process. So it's a 10-week program where we assign reading every week, and it's a reasonable about reading. We had a very scientific method for figuring out how much reading to assign. We basically Googled how much can a person read in a day or in a week or something like that. I don't remember, some Google. And we're like, all right, let's take that. Let's split it, by so many days, and then, assign a percentage of that. So it comes out to like 2 chapters out of the CISSP book a week. And then every week we have a 2-hour webinar where some of our folks that have been teaching the CISSP for years, we just talk through like, here's what you should have learned. Here are some tips and tricks on, watch out for this when you take the test, or keep this in mind. This section of the book is really challenging. Here's some ways to help memorize that. And so the goal is just to help people be able to take the test more easily. And we do that for 10 weeks. We've got, 10 separate sessions. We've got Slack channel that goes with it for people to ask questions and all that. So it's worked out really well. I like to say we have 100% success rate. Everybody that has reported back to us passed the test.
Sure.
To be fair, the people that didn't pass probably didn't let us know. So, we don't really advertise and promote it that way, but I think it's been really successful, and it's been really good.
Yeah. So my wife got her, you call it a CISSP?
CISSP?
First of all, I think we need to definitely have what's the correct way to say CISSP?
Oh man, we need a poll. I've always heard it say CISSP.
CISSP. Okay.
Yeah. It's sort of like the SQL versus SQL.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you call that database server?
Come
on, throw it out there. Server. SQL. Oh man. So I call it a SQL server, but the language is SQL. I don't know why. It's just the way I learned it.
Yeah. Oh, back to that 100% thing. Has anyone else heard this? I'm going to derail this whole conversation real quick. Someone recently told me that when they say the rain forecast is 50% or 30% or 70%, what they mean is 100% of 70% of the area is going to get rain.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
So like in your zip code,
100% of 70% of the area.
So if it says 40% chance of rain, what it means is 40% of that place is going to get 100% rain. Like we're 100% rain for 40% of the area.
That's the way I've always taken it. So of a certain geographical area, if it's 40% of that area is going to get rain, guaranteed.
Yes.
As opposed to but that's the same as each individual point has a 40% chance of being within that area, right?
Yes.
I did not do well in statistics course. Like I got through it, but just barely.
Oh, so I passed my final exam of statistics class by actually just, going through and doing everything. And I remember turning it in, and my teacher gave me the biggest eye roll ever. And I got a 78%, and she was so angry. And I was like, it's just statistics. It's just probability.
Why does it matter? It's just...
Yeah.
That's great.
All right. So you're doing the CISSP.
Yep.
Yes.
One thing I want to emphasize on that is it is part of the Pay What You Can program. We've been doing that for several years. Stole the idea from John, borrowed the idea from John. How about that? But so whatever you can afford to pay, there are costs for the books. There's 2 big books that you get along with it. So I don't remember what the number is. You can look it up on the website. If you pay whatever that minimum is, we'll ship you the books. If you pay less than that, you got to get the books on your own.
Sure.
But one of the coolest things that I've seen is folks that have come back to us after they passed the test and said, hey, I wasn't able to pay for this. I just paid the minimum. I got the books or whatever, but I'm so thankful. I want to pay for somebody else to get the books. And so we've had some folks come back after. It hadn't happened very often, but we've had a couple of folks come. It's sort of like when you're in line at Starbucks and you pay for the guy behind you, pass it along kind of thing. It's sort of like that. We're seeing people say, hey, I want to invest in somebody else that's trying to up and come. I'm gonna pay for their book. So I hope to see that trend continue. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it happens with John's classes from time to time too. People like, hey, is there any way I can sponsor some people? And we're always like, but it's pay what you can. Like it's because there's if you need tuition assistance for ours, you can get all the way down to 0. All right. So what was one of your favorite things? Because Defcon, we're talking about Defcon. It just happened. Some people are still testing negative, and that's great. Keep that going. So what was one of your favorite things from the entire experience?
Man, favorite things. So we put a lot of focus on team building because we took our entire technical team, most of them. So I really enjoyed getting the relationships, getting to know people. I went to several villages and made lots of contacts. I don't know that I could pull one out over the other. I think they were all pretty cool. That's a hard question. I think for me, it's just the community, like I'm sure there will great talks. I will probably follow up with them on YouTube, in a month or so, whenever they come out. But I will say it flooded. That's the first time I've ever seen. It's the first time I've ever seen rain in Vegas, let alone floods in Vegas.
That was like biblical. I woke up the following morning and I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was some flood. Did you get a chance to see it in person?
So the house we were staying in had a pool in the back. And at one point we noticed rain was coming in the back door. And it wasn't from we freaked out. We're like, oh my gosh, the pool's like overflowing. And they're like, oh wait, no, that's rain. And rain, it was just pouring in the back door because they're not, their seals aren't good because they haven't had rain in 20 years.
Yeah.
But looking at some of the
model.
That's exactly right. I did miss out though. Like there were guys that had some of the big blow up animals and whatnot. Like there was a guy with a blow up alligator. If you've ever been to Vegas, there's lots of drainage ditches. I've always thought it was ridiculous how many drainage ditches there were because it doesn't rain. But now I understand when it rains, the ground can't absorb the water and it has to go somewhere. So, I mean, literally there were just rivers of people diving on these blow up dolls, or not blow up dolls. That would have been more interesting. Animals, right?
Well, it is Vegas.
It is Vegas, right? What happens there stays there.
I feel like that person should be on dysentery watch right now, though. Like let us know, please, if you got dysentery from being on the alligator. Yeah. Let the world know because we've all seen it. So.
Yeah. I was reading one of the comments. I was looking at the membership. I'm already doing a few evening courses. I take it you're doing it again. Any idea when the next one will be started? Great question. So we try to do it 3 times a year. We've done that for the last several years. Usually we start one in late January, early February, again in May, June, and then in the September timeframe. With the type of testing we do, Q4 ends up being a nightmare, so we skip over that. We will absolutely do it again. And the other thing we do is once you pay once to be in the course, you're part of the team. You're in the course. You can take it again anytime. So if we have a lot of people that start through the course and they get 3 weeks in and just hey, I can't keep up with the reading at this time. And so we'll send them a discount code and they can take it again the next time for free. They just jump in. And sometimes people go through the whole thing, they do all the reading and they're just not confident. So it's hey, come do it again. Take it 2 times, 3 times, whatever it takes. And when you're ready, go take the test. So that's worked out really positively.
You got a pretty long comment from Fizzer UK. So I'm going to have you read it while I just... One of the reasons why I asked Nathan what was his favorite thing is that we have a family tradition in my family. Whenever you're done going somewhere, you always ask someone, what was your favorite moment of that event? And what happens is you have to go through all of your favorite moments. And it almost brings all your favorite moments to the surface. Because sometimes you go through and you're like, oh, I did this, and you can't find. But all of a sudden when someone's like, what's your favorite moment from that experience? You have to think about it, but then you get to think about all of them. And so if you had any kind of negative feeling towards that trip, all of a sudden you can't anymore because you have to only think about positive ones. So
that's good. I like that.
All right. So go ahead with Fizzer's question.
Yeah. So they're asking what's wrong with the SSCP. And if you're not familiar, it's the System Security Certified Practitioner. I'm going to challenge the question a little bit. I wouldn't say that there's anything wrong with it. I'm not terribly familiar with it, and that says something. They mention here that it's aimed at analysts as opposed to CISSP is managerial. I think that's a big part of it. I'll be honest. Jason pointed out earlier, and I agreed. At the entry level for security, we really don't care about degrees that much. And I've had friends say, "Hey, should my kid? He just graduated high school. Should he go and get a degree, or should he just go get a job and get experience?" And I look at it and I'm like, well, both. I worked my way through college, right? Get experience while you're getting the degree, and then you get the best of both worlds. And that's a challenging, but that's the best way to do it if you can. Here's the thing: when you hit, I'm gonna make up an age and say 40, and you're ready to become less technical and move into management stuff, that CISSP is a significant gatekeeper. You are not going to move into a management position at most organizations unless you have the CISSP and or some type of college degree. I think that's changing, and I think we're going to see that continue to change. But for larger organizations, it's still going to be a gatekeeper. And so for a technical person and maybe someone who's in their mid-20s and expecting to be technical for the next 10 or 20 years, absolutely the SSCP is a worthwhile cert. It's just not as valuable long-term, I think, as the CISSP is.
Yeah. And some of that is a marketing problem for that degree. Like it's...
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Not a lot of adoption. Not a lot of people have it. Not a lot of baseline of like, oh, well, if you have that, then you must be this kind of person. So what you bring up to, Nathan's good point. Like I didn't have a degree. I have an associate's degree in filmmaking, right? Like it's, what am I going to do with that? And I just, at one point I was like, should I go to school and get a MBA or something like that in business, or should I buy a business? So I bought a business. I owned a business for 5 years. It was successful. I then sold it successfully. And then when I moved out to California and all this other stuff, once I got out there and I was looking for other jobs, not a single person cared that I owned a business. They wanted to see my degree. And I was like, that hurts. Like I had the skills, I had the qualifications, but there were so many gates that I had a hard time. And so I had to like invent my own way of doing it, but through networking and everything else. But
so I'll challenge that a little bit and say, I think maybe your experiences are limited by the ways that you were trying to find the job. I think most people, not just in our industry, but in general, they go the route of, let me put together a resume, let me apply to these big jobs and whatnot, instead of working on meeting people and developing networks. So Jordan Harbinger has a great podcast. I don't listen to it much anymore because it's long, but he's interviewed some amazing people. Jordan Harbinger, if you want to look it up. He's interviewed a lot of security people too. It's really awesome. But he has he calls it his 7-minute networking course. And that's kind of a misnomer, but he basically teaches you how to build a personal network, how to meet people, how to get to know people, and how to, it turns out when you care about people and show interest in them, they kind of return the favor. And so building that, every job that I've ever gotten has come when somebody else said, hey, will you come work for me? Right. Like I've been very blessed, and I know that's not, that doesn't work for everybody, but I think having that network of saying like, hey, I'm looking for a job. Can you help me? Do you know somebody at this company? I think that is the better way to get to that point, so that you're not just saying, here's my resume and this is what I look like on paper. Oh, you don't have the degree. Well, screw you, hippie. I don't know. I know there's no one piece of advice that works for everybody.
Yeah. One of the, like my wife and I, when we were doing the job hunting live streams, we always said the best jobs are the ones that aren't mentioned. Like they're not the ones that are out there. It's the one where someone's like, hey, let me build a job for you because I know you and I know what skills you have. But it takes a while to get there.
Yeah.
All right. So Nemesis. Oh yeah, Nemesis. Look at Jason figuring out how a username sounds without butchering it. There's a question there for you, Nathan.
I see that.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So they're asking, do you like to see a bit of alphabet soup after candidates' names, or does that matter? Personally, it doesn't matter. I've never looked at certificates. I don't think, other than the CISSP, I don't think I have any active certs. I had a bunch of SANS stuff or GX stuff that I let expire. Everything else I think is expired over the years. I failed the OSCP for a stupid reason, and I'm not going to go into it here, but I missed it by 1 point, and it was like, at the time it was like $60 to retake it, and I'm like, screw it. I've been a pen tester for 6 years. Like, I don't need the cert. I was just taking it for fun to do it with a friend. When I see a whole bunch of certs on somebody's resume, it's a way to ask questions. It's a, tell me about these. Why do you have all these? If like, I know people that are, what do they call them? Paper tigers, where it's like, hey, they literally, their job pays for a SANS cert per year. And now they have 37 of them and they have to maintain all that. Do they really know deep technical knowledge in all 37 of those areas? Probably not. But there's something to talk about. Some people do, right? Like some people just collect those because it's paid for. Why not? I think it really depends on the individual. I can't speak to whether that helps at large companies get through or not. I don't know.
So I got two questions for you as we wrap up. 1, what is your favorite thing about being a pen tester? And then 2, what's your favorite thing about being a teacher? So you can answer them in either order.
All right. So being a teacher, I really like seeing people get it. Like when people are struggling, we teach a lot of classes in person. Companies have us come in and, whether it's network pen testing or my favorite is like when somebody who's a little bit confrontational and they think they know stuff and they're struggling to get a concept. And then that moment when they get it and their eyes light up, like right now, I'm picturing this guy that he thought cross-site request forgery was stupid. It's a made-up vulnerability. There's no point in it. This is dumb that we're even having to learn this. And through a lab exercise that we had in this class, I showed him what was possible. And then I said, what if this happened here and here and here? And, referencing some apps that he maintains. And all of a sudden his eyes are like, oh crap. Like you could see his like, that would be really, really bad. And I'm like, yeah, you got it. Like him learning to exploit it all of a sudden open. So I love that part of being a teacher. I also talk a lot. So being able to stand in front of people and talk is just naturally, I've taught my entire life. I teach Sunday school every week and I teach all kinds of things. So I really enjoy that. Being a pen tester, I like the nuance. So I wouldn't make a good auditor. I'm not check the box. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. You fail. I'm not a good compliance person. I do a lot with compliance. But I like the nuance of, hey, you've got this particular thing. And that would normally be a really high risk flaw. But based on this control and the way you're doing this, we can minimize the risk if you do this and this, right? Like, because there are times where business just has to get things done.
Sure.
Business can't be 100% safe all the time. You've got to take some risks. You've got to delegate your priorities in different ways. And so being able to work with people and say, what are your goals? Is it improve security? Is it to mitigate compliance? Is it whatever? Like being able to understand the nuance and help them find ways to get that done. I think that's what I enjoy most about a pen tester. And maybe I'm saying that it sounds kind of corny. Hacking the shells and rooting the things maybe is more exciting, but that's a really short-lived excitement, right? Like that's 10 seconds of woohoo. But being able to see people, like being able to see their lives improved and companies do a better job over a period of time, I really like seeing that.
Yeah. Corvus said, I like to say that I get a contact high when the light bulb goes off over their heads. Like,
yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it makes you feel good because it's like, yeah, they got it. I did something.
Yeah.
I love that.
Like, oh, it is worth living. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Nathan, any final thoughts on Defcon, the CISSP as we wrap up today?
Man, you know what? Your comment about a con within a con from some of the villages, and I kind of mentioned it's 30 cons within a con. I think we're seeing that same type of thing happening on a larger scale. I mean, both nationally and internationally. I'm one of the organizers for B-Sides OK. If you're anywhere in the 5 or 6 state area, we'd love to see you next April. But I think there are so many cons like that, Wild West Hacking Fest and Way West, and so many opportunities for people to just get their foot in the door, to meet people, to learn new things, to get some experiences they wouldn't otherwise have, to meet people. There's so much there that I love the fact that we have that, because when I was first getting into security almost 20 years ago, that wasn't a thing, right? Like you had a couple of options and that was it. I used to call Defcon church camp because it's like you go away for a week to this remote place with people that think just like you, and you get to learn, and it's a wonderful place and you love it and it's great and you get this high, and then you go back to the people that don't think just like you and are just sick and tired of the way things always are, and they don't want to hear about what you learned. They know you're going to forget about it in 2 weeks, right? Like there's so many parallels there, but that's me.
Yeah. And anything about the CISSP before we go?
You know what? We don't really have a limit. I say that. I don't know if there's a limit or not. I'd love to see everybody on it. People learn in that type of environment when there's more people there. So even if you're kind of on the shelf, I don't know if this is for me or not, jump in and try it, because there's a good chance that you'll have some experiences or questions that will help other people learn. Yeah. And the bigger the community, our Slack channel has continued to grow, that we build that in. We've got a lot of people that passed the test 2 or 3 years ago, they still stay and participate because they get value out of helping other people too.
Yeah, and we saw the same thing with John's class. Like, we would rather have 300 people in a class and just like for a little bit of money, than charge a lot and have just like 4 or 5 people in there. Because like 300 people is way more fun than having like 4 or 5 people in there. Absolutely. So I'm glad you guys are doing that. Pay what you can as well.
Haircut. I live right behind you. Turn around. If you look over your shoulder, no, I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I guess I never mentioned that. So if anybody's in the Tulsa area, look me up.
Nathan, thanks so much for joining us. Ryan, thanks for keeping us alive, and that we do this all the time. We're back every Tuesday and Wednesday, so if you found anything beneficial today, it is always random. So we have no idea what we're going to talk about until we talk about it. So join us on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, or watch the recordings whenever you can. Nathan, thanks for your time today. Ryan, see you later. Bye, everybody. See you next time. Bye-bye. Ryan,